Welcome into the Football Room podcast. James Foster here. Today we're grading picks 16 through 32 of the 2023 NFL Draft. Before we get into it, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel on YouTube and follow A to Z Sports NFL on X.
Welcome back, everyone. The Football Room is now open. My name is Destin Adams. I'm an Indianapolis Colts beat reporter for A to Z Sports. And I am joined here, as always, by the man of this channel, James Foster. James, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. The college football video game has given me life. I'm super excited for that.
So close. I tweeted this out this week, actually. Like, me and my wife got into a conversation about it because I got a PS5, and she was asking me, like, why I decided to get a PS5 now. It's been out for a couple of years, and I was just straight up. I was like, I can't play college football on the PS4. So she said, you are buying this system for one game. And I said, yep, and it's worth it.
I did the exact same thing. I literally, I don't really play video games that much anymore outside of the occasional old school RuneScape, but I literally bought a new Xbox just to play this game. So I'm super pumped.
Yeah. We're getting close. I'm super excited to rebuild Coastal Carolina in a couple of months to a national champion. But we are jumping back into a series. If you missed it last week, we covered picks 1 through 16 from the 2023 NFL Draft, where James and I were going back and regrading these players after seeing their rookie seasons last year. Today, we're continuing where we left off. We're jumping into pick 17 of last year's draft, which is the New England Patriots drafting Christian Gonzalez out of Oregon. I'm going to be honest. This was one of the most shocking picks to me last year just because I couldn't believe he was there. Gonzalez was a top 5 player on my board in 2023. He was the number 1 corner on my board. And for him to fall to the Patriots at 17, it felt like unreal value then after watching him play this last year for his rookie season. I think this is an A+. I think the value at 17 is ridiculous. I think Gonzalez has the size, the athleticism, the ability and coverage to truly become a lockdown number 1 corner for a defense. And I'm super excited to see what he looks like in year 2 with the Patriots. And I think this is one of the best players in the first round last year overall, one of the best rookies from last year. And for him to be at 17, that's an A+ for me.
Yeah, I'm with you. I went with an A. It's another one where it's kind of difficult to assign a letter grade because they didn't play a full season, only 3.5 games pretty much for Christian Gonzalez, but it's incredible. He had pretty much the most difficult receiver matchups. Like if you just tried to plan out the most difficult one-on-ones for a rookie corner, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, next week, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle had a ton of really good reps against all of the elite receivers that he faced. And most of the plays that he gave up, it was just playing soft coverage and it's a 10-yard stop route and then he makes the tackle. It was that sort of thing. There weren't any major coverage busts or getting beat in man coverage. So, yeah, I think that Christian Gonzalez, he was my number 1 corner. I think that taking Devin Witherspoon over him is perfectly understandable, but taking Emmanuel Forbes over him, I think is a borderline fireable offense. And both of them, unfortunately, proved that last year. So big fan of what Christian Gonzalez did. The next pick at 18, we've got linebacker Jack Campbell for the Lions. And I went with a C+ for Jack Campbell. Went through pretty much all of his tape a few days ago, and I thought that for a rookie linebacker, he was very good in run defense. I didn't see really any misfits, playing the wrong gap or anything like that. He's got the size to hold up at the point of attack. I think there were just a couple times that I saw him get knocked over or something. Reliable tackler. I think I'm confident that he can be a high quality run defender. And he already was that as a rookie. I do have some real concerns about his ability to be a playable cover linebacker. his rookie coverage tape was rough. He's a sitting duck in zone coverage. He just kind of spot drops 8 yards backwards, doesn't really anticipate stuff that's developing behind him, and he just got picked on in zone. When he had to cover vertical routes and run down the seam, it was borderline at best. There's a lot of times that he's just getting straight up beat. Some other times that, he's got the recovery effort to make a play on an underthrown pass or something. I just think there are some real limitations there. Part of it can be fixed with just route anticipation, but I've always kind of questioned his athletic ability as far as a cover player, even though he tested really well. So I'm going with C+. I think solid player with some limitations.
Yeah, so I went with a B, so I'm going to start there. I didn't understand Campbell going in round one when it happened, just because of a lot of what you got into. I feel like watching him in college even, like he didn't look like a guy that was going to project well in coverage. And typically if you're going to use a first-round pick on a linebacker, you want it to be a guy that you can use to be a defensive stopper in both the run and pass game. But I'm going to go with a B because I think we saw last year how the Lions want to use Campbell, and I think he's going to be very good in the role that he has there. I don't think he's going to be a guy that they look to be a stopper against a Christian McCaffrey in the NFC Championship game by any means, but I do, in the passing game. But I do think he's a guy who knows how to use his athleticism well. I think he's strong. I think he's able to get to the backfield and make plays. He had a really good rookie season last year, and I think he looked like he belonged as a first-round pick last year. He didn't play like a guy that was overdrafted, so I may have been a little bit lower on him than maybe I should have been going into his rookie season, but I ended up with a B. He'd probably be in that B+ to A- range if he was better in coverage, because I still feel like that is a big element of drafting a linebacker in the first round, but the Lions saw something there, and I think he had a really successful season in the role he's going to play in Detroit specifically. Going over here to pick 19, one of the stars of the draft cycle last year, Kijah Cancey, goes to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I thought Cancey had a really solid rookie season. I think he showed that he's not just this athletic freak who was super raw and wasn't going to be able to play early. I feel like he saw the snaps he could use and was effective. So this is another guy that I went in the B range, but I gave a B+ too, because I think Cancey showed next level ability at times. I think he flashed that ability to be like a real game wrecker from the interior. And I think in Tampa Bay, getting somebody this athletic and putting them next to a Vita Vea was just a perfect decision by Tampa Bay. So I went with a B+. I think the flashes were not the entire year, which is what's keeping it out of the A range. I think there were still some moments where you could see his not great understanding of how to attack different offensive line styles, and he struggled in certain games. But I think Kijah Cancey is a perfect complement to Vea in this Tampa Bay defense. I think he's going to be a star really soon. So I'm going with a B+, and to get that at pick 19, that's great value.
Yeah, I went with a B for Kijah Cancey. He's kind of like a Jekyll and Hyde type of player where the pass rushing I thought was excellent, and I think he missed some games towards the middle of the season, but I remember watching him week 1 against the Vikings, like first drive, he wins with a club swim just immediately off the snap. Like one of those players that you can tell just the quickness and explosiveness immediately translated to the NFL. And you combine that with a player who has a full bag of pass rushing moves. And I think just as he continues to refine that, he's going to be more and more successful. Already was a successful pass rusher as a rookie, but the run defense was terrible. Like there's no way to slice it. I did a video on him, and I had too many examples of him getting pancaked to fill in the entire video. It would have been 20 minutes. And like the stats kind of bear that out. He had the lowest PFF run defense grade of any defensive lineman last year, 29.5. I know PFF grades aren't everything, but if you rank dead last, I think it at least kind of tells you something, and the film bears that out also. So I wonder, what his upside is as far as being a complete 3-down player. If you're an elite pass rusher, you can get by just being an average or slightly below average run defender, but you can't be a liability. Like, defenses don't want to have one player on the field that offenses know they can just attack every snap. And last year, that's kind of what Kijah Cancey was. So if he can, in some way improve his run defense, that would be huge for him. But he just kind of gets overwhelmed. It's like, it looks like a size thing. And so I wonder how much he can really improve that. But pass rushing is most important. He hit the ground running as a rookie. So going to give that pick a B. Pick 20, we've got Jackson Smith and Jigba, wide receiver, to the Seahawks. And I'm going with another C+ here for Jackson Smith and Jigba. I thought it was a solid, kind of unremarkable rookie season. Didn't really have the high-end usage as you would expect for a receiver that's on a team with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, but I felt like he was exactly as advertised coming out of college, outside of the fact that he had a real drop issue. 11.3% drop rate last year is definitely on the high end. For his kind of style of receiver, he can't be a player that has drop issues, in my opinion. If you're a big play threat that's constantly adding 40, 50-yard chunk plays, you can get by with some focus drops. But if the way that you're making your money is just reliable, move the chains, 10-yard in cut, quick slant type of plays, like, you got to be more reliable catching the football. So that's the main thing that he needs to improve, and I expect that it will. But he's a functional, efficient route runner. Even though he doesn't have the deep speed, he can get off a press. So I don't think he's a slot only. You want him in the slot because he's not much of a deep threat. But I think a really solid starting caliber receiver. Don't see the upside to be any kind of game-changing threat, but I think that as long as DK Metcalf is in the fold, and for whatever they have left of Tyler Lockett, I think Jackson Smith and Jigba should be pretty good for them.
Yeah, so I ended up going with a solid B. I think, like you said, the usage rate wasn't there. And I think that was kind of the shock of why Seattle was the team to start the receiver run last year, was because we kind of knew that a rookie receiver wasn't going to be able to come in and be that day one game-changing level player. And we saw that with DK Metcalf and with Tyler Lockett there. But I think the pick of Jackson Smith and Jigba was all about the post-Lockett tenure in Seattle, which we're probably coming close to. Like, if you put the over-under in that 2.5 seasons of more Tyler Lockett, I'd probably take the under. Probably somewhere in that 2-year range is where you're looking at it. And I think JSN showed last year what he can do as a route runner. I think he showed his ability to make big plays. He's got to, like you said, figure out some of those drop issues, and he's got to figure out a way to kind of carve out a larger role, even while Lockett is still going to be here. Because the NFL has shown 3 productive receivers is something that can be managed. It's just how you go about it. But I went with a B just because I feel like there were probably some other receivers that could have fit day one to be able to look with those guys, but that wasn't what Seattle was looking for. They wanted to look for a guy to replace Lockett in the near future, and I think JSN is going to be a really good complement to DK Metcalf. So I went with a B. I wanted to go B+ just because I see the future outlook on it, but the drop issue really did lower it a little bit for me personally. So I went with a B overall for JSN. Really excited to see year 2, though. For number 21, we're going to have a little bit of a receiver run here, obviously, with the Los Angeles Chargers going Quinton Johnston. Man. It was a rookie year. It was a rookie season. He had a similar thing that JSN had, where when he was drafted, he was going into a pretty stacked receiver room, but he didn't have the flashes that JSN had, still had some drop issues, but didn't flash the route running that we saw at TCU. We didn't flash big playability. He didn't flash. It was a really struggled year, and to go from being the third receiver last year to the top two receivers above him leaving, and now he's going to have to play more this year. There wasn't much to watch last year where you were optimistic about what this is going to look like in year two. It'll be really interesting to see what a Ladd McConkey, Quinton Johnston receiver room produces this year. I wouldn't be shocked if Ladd McConkey outproduces Quinton Johnston. But I ended up going with a D, just a straight up D. I know I'm a little bit nicer when it comes to these grades than James, so we may get a little bit worse one from James here in a second. I saw the upside with Johnston as a rookie, and I want to believe that year two, new offensive coaching staff coming in, more snaps being opened up, and seeing how poor he played last year, that'll be used as motivation. He'll improve from what he did last year, but I really think there's only one way to go, and it's up for Quinton Johnston. I don't think we'll get worse, but off his rookie season alone, you got to go at least a D. So that's where I went.
Yeah, I went with a D minus.
We're close.
I'm definitely close. Yeah. So I'm definitely a harsher grader than you, but my philosophy with the grades is mainly just trying to I'm trying to use the full grading scale whenever I do something like this. So it's not trying to be a hater. It's just trying to establish separation between the best and the worst of whatever we're grading. I decided that an F should be reserved for like if you just can't even get on the field. So like I gave Tyree Wilson an F last episode. I would probably revise that and say D minus. And I will also give Quinton Johnston a D minus. It's hard to find too many positives from his rookie season. I was working on a video and going through some of Matt Harmon's data at Reception Perception, where he charts the receivers. And I was looking at the rookies, and these are Quinton Johnston's success rates against different coverages. Man coverage, 44.1% success rate, which is first percentile in NFL history. Zone coverage, 61.9%, also first percentile. We get some improvement with press coverage, 32.3%. That's second percentile. So that's going to be his go-to, I think. And then you combine that with, it wasn't a incredibly high drop rate, but they all came in super pivotal moments and like resulted in missing out on really big game-changing plays. Quinton Johnston's rookie season, like it's hard to feel optimistic about him going forward. They definitely had him playing a role that didn't really fit his skill set as an X receiver that they're wanting to, separate on real routes. I view him as a player that you want to get him as many yak opportunities as possible. But it's like, if you take a receiver in the first round, obviously the front office and the coaching staff viewed him as a full-time, do it all type of receiver. So it's understandable that they would put him in that role. I just think it was a missed evaluation. So yeah, I'm going D minus. At least he was on the field, but what he did when he was on the field was not very good. Next receiver, we've got Zay Flowers for the Baltimore Ravens at pick 22. And I went with a B plus for Zay Flowers. I just finished editing the YouTube breakdown on him that should be up shortly and probably already up by the time you're watching this podcast. But I thought that Zay Flowers was the third best rookie receiver last year behind Puka Nacua and Tank Dell. He has the speed to be a deep threat. Actually didn't end up connecting on a lot of the slot fades and go routes that he ran last year, but he was getting open. There were just some overthrows from Lamar Jackson, sometimes that he couldn't get rid of the ball. I think in a higher usage role as Baltimore's true deep threat, I think he could have a lot of success. He is an excellent route runner, out routes, stop routes, in breakers. He can do it all. Had a lot of screen targets. So some people might kind of view him as a player that's pigeonholed into a gadget role. And I think, he's really effective, dynamic after the catch. So I have no problem with that, but he can run the full route tree, separate at a high level. Another player that had some drop issues, and at his size, I don't think he's ever going to be great against press coverage, but I'm going with a B+ for Zay Flowers. I think really successful rookie season, and I'm excited to see him in the Ravens offense this year with a higher usage rate and OBJ out of the picture.
Yeah, for Flowers, I went with a A-. I think Flowers is a dynamic weapon. Like you said, I'm super excited to see him without Odell this next year and what that looks like. I thought getting a big body receiver to play opposite of him to open up some things offensively should have been a higher priority for Baltimore this offseason. They did end up taking Devontae Walker in the 4th round, and there's some upside with Walker as a bigger body receiver to throw on the outside to take a little bit of pressure off Flowers. It'll be interesting to see if Baltimore can kind of unlock that skill set and complementing them well. But like you said last year, I think Flowers was easily a top 3 rookie receiver. I think what he does well is a great complement to what Lamar Jackson looks for when he's targeting players. Being able to use Flowers in the middle of the field, using Flowers to find the opening and then make a play afterwards. I'm excited to kind of see that duo grow, even if they didn't find that A+ compliment to be there this year. I'm really excited to kind of see what Flowers looks like year 2, because I think he's a really, even though he's 5'9", 182, he plays bigger than that, which is what you want from these little smaller guys. Like when you play, if you're a smaller receiver and on film, you look small via how you play, like that's usually a red flag, because it's very hard to be an undersized receiver and work in the NFL. We've obviously seen it, but the guys that do are guys like Flowers that find ways to play above what they're listed. So I went with an A- because I think at 22, it's a perfect value for what Baltimore needed there. And of the receivers that we've mentioned so far, I think he fell in the best situation of those guys, and we saw that in year 1 for sure. Up next, we get to end the receiver run that we've been talking through, and that is Jordan Addison to the Minnesota Vikings. This is another guy who I think had a really successful rookie season. Of the guys that we've all talked about now, I think it was pretty clear he was going to the best overall situation day 1. Had Justin Jefferson opposite of him for most of the season. Obviously, Jefferson had to miss some time last year, and I think we got to see Jordan Addison show what he kind of was able to do at 2 different universities in college for a reason, and why he was kind of that first big name to use like the transfer portal NIL world to his own advantage and kind of made a name for himself there. And I think we got to see why his talent warranted that at Minnesota. I think he's a shifty route runner. I think he's a guy that can be a reliable option in an offense. And man, for J.J. McCarthy to go there this year, and obviously we'll see how the quarterback battle goes this year, but for a rookie quarterback to walk in with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison on day 1 as a receiver room, like it's hard to get better than that. And I'm really excited to see what Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson continue to do, because if Addison takes another step forward, that could be one of the best receiver duos in the NFL very soon. So I went with an A- as well. So same grade that I gave Zay Flowers. I think both of these teams, if they had the chance to do it over, obviously everyone will bring up like the Puka Nacua season last year, but I think there's a really solid argument to be had that both the Ravens and the Vikings feel very, very good about their rookie receiver that they had last year.
Are there any of these 4 first-round receivers that you would take over Puka Nacua if you were like redrafting for one of these teams?
For these teams?
Yeah.
Specifically? Man, I think the thing with Puka is so unique because like he is such a great fit with the Rams offense. Like obviously in a redraft, he's going higher than he did, but I have a hard time. I mean, the Chargers obviously would take Puka over Quinton Johnston last year. I really don't know if the Ravens or Vikings would take Puka over their rookie receiver last year. Puka had a better season, but I don't know if you input Puka into their offense, if it's a 1-for-1 comparison, if that makes sense, to what he was with the Rams.
Yeah, if I was doing it, I would probably take Puka over all of the first round receivers except Zay Flowers. I would still take Zay in that position. But looking at Jordan Addison, I went with a B- for him. I feel very similarly about Addison as I do about JSN. I think JSN is a just starting caliber slot receiver. I think Addison is a starting caliber Z. Like you said, good route runner, especially on outbreaking routes and especially against off coverage. Has some issues with playing through contact at the catch point, but very reliable hands as far as catching open passes. I know he had some drop issues early in his career, but he's had back-to-back seasons, I believe, of sub 5% drop rate. So that seems to be an issue that he's fixed. He just has a major problem beating press coverage. I said this in my Jordan Addison video, but like I'm sure there are receivers in the NFL that are worse against press than Jordan Addison, but I don't really watch a lot of wide receiver fives. So, I'm sure there's plenty of worse receivers, but of players that we consider a wide receiver 2 or better, I haven't watched a receiver that's worse against press than Jordan Addison. Just gets bullied at the line of scrimmage, which is what happens if you're a smaller receiver that doesn't have elite explosiveness and suddenness. If you're quick enough that receivers can't even get their hands on you, it doesn't matter how big you are. With Jordan Addison, he's just a solid athlete, below average athlete for his size. So corners are able to land their punch, and then when they do, they're just ragdolling him into the ground. So that really, to me, puts a cap on what he can be. I think he's a Z or slot only. And I think that my perception of him is also probably a little bit lower than some other people because a lot of his big plays and specifically touchdowns came off of coverage busts, like in a substantial amount compared to other receivers that you watch. So I feel like we might be due for some touchdown regression this next season. But yeah, just like a solid starting caliber receiver. Got no problem with taking that in the first round. So I went with a B-. Now that we are off go ahead.
I would say like the touchdown regression statement. I mean, like earlier I said that like the NFL nowadays, like it's sustainable for receivers to have 2 or 3 receivers having good seasons together. It would be pretty hard to have 2 receivers both going for 10 plus touchdowns, just because most quarterbacks are throwing in the high 20s, low 30s like that. Like that's a very high volume going to 2 players, right? But I mean, I would say for Addison, another reason why I think I'm higher on him than maybe you are is because like if we were to rank like the top 5 rookie performances from last year and use game performances, there's probably a fairly good argument to have 2 of Addison's games in there. I think he showed that next level ability to be that kind of playmaker. I think the press coverage situation is a really good point, though. I mean, he's smaller, obviously came in at 175-ish. So him struggling against press is not that shocking. And that's definitely something he has to grow upon. But like you use that Bengals game where they lost in overtime, 6 catches, 111 yards, 2 touchdowns. You go against their win against the Niners, 22-17, where he has 7 catches, 123 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Like I think being able to show that you can have those level of games and just take over. I mean that's 14 points going to Addison, essentially 22-17 against the Niners. So I think Addison showed last year what he can be. So I'm really interested to kind of see where that goes. Where even if he doesn't get to 10 touchdowns, like I think he can have a very successful second season.
Yep, makes sense. And Kevin O'Connell has I think proven to be a good offensive coordinator, which is gonna he's the cause for a lot of coverage busts. So could actually be more sustainable than I'm initially thinking. So moving off of the cornerback run at 24, the Giants take cornerback Deontay Banks out of Maryland. Player that I was very high on, had him actually like just a couple spots below Christian Gonzalez and Devin Witherspoon. I went with a C+ for Deontay Banks. I think that he was put in probably as difficult of a situation as maybe any of these rookies playing in such a man coverage heavy scheme. They just kind of threw him into the fire and had him playing press man every single snap. And I think overall he held up pretty well, but did give up a lot of plays, gave up a lot of yards. Like as you would expect, you're playing man coverage on CeeDee Lamb 25 snaps a game. That's going to happen for a rookie. But it wasn't a situation where he was just getting picked on like another stray for Emmanuel Forbes. But like Emmanuel Forbes, there were games where it's like, man, this guy, you want him on the field to develop, but I don't think it's worth it. With Deontay Banks, it was more like he gives up a play, then he makes a nice pass breakup, back and forth that you want to see for a rookie, showed the high-end talent that made him a first-round pick. And I think in a more multiple, diverse scheme with Shane Bowen, where he's going to have some zone coverage reps where he's hidden, I think he's going to look a lot better statistically on top of, just second-year improvement. So yeah, I'm still really optimistic about Deontay Banks. I think he has a chance to be one of the best corners in the NFL, but I do have to go C+ because he did have an up and down rookie season.
Yeah, I mean, I went with a B, just because I think the flashes
I think my C+ are like your Bs.
It's possible
based on how we do grades, but yeah,
it really is possible. I think I saw enough flashes from Banks, and to show more context, like I'm on record, like I think corner is the hardest position in the NFL to play outside of quarterback. Playing quarterback at a high level obviously is very difficult, but playing corner in today's NFL, where there's so many dynamic players at receiver, it just sounds impossible. And we see it year in and year out how much we see rookies struggle at corner early because there's just such a big learning curve from the college game to the NFL game in terms of guarding these level of receivers. And I think Banks flashed a lot this past year, and I would have a higher upside, like outlook on what his year 2 could look like if the Giants got any help in the secondary for him this offseason, and they didn't. So like that's the thing that still is such a struggle for Banks, is he's pretty much going to be on his own in terms of guarding the other team's best receiver game in and game out, and that's going to result in some bad highlight reel plays, if that makes sense. Like it's gonna in turn show negatively on Banks, while I think he is a really strong player who, if we were redrafting corners from last year, like I would feel fairly confident that I would take him as my corner 3 from this past class. So I feel like a B is warranted for Banks. I feel like the Giants, if they go corner again in a redraft, they would feel very strong about Banks being there for them. And there's probably a chance that he's not there in a redraft even. So I went with a B for Banks. And I just wish the Giants would have did more to help him this offseason so I could have a better outlook for year 2. But that didn't come to fruition. At pick 25, the Bills selected Dalton Kincaid, tight end. This is an interesting one, because if I'm just grading their rookie season, it's a lower grade. But looking towards year 2, I mean, you have to expect a large jump in production for Kincaid in terms of targets. I think Kincaid showed this past year what he can be as a route runner, what he can be as a tight end, and having a dynamic playmaker at tight end has just shown itself to be such an advantage for an NFL offense. I'm going with a B again, which is funny because we just talked about C+ to B comparisons with us. But I think Kincaid has shown himself to be a dynamic playmaker at tight end, which warrants being selected this high. Now, obviously, we also saw last year Sam Laporta with Detroit, who didn't go in round 1, have one of the better rookie seasons of any tight end we've seen in recent history. So I think in a redraft, Kincaid's not the first tight end off the board again, obviously. But I do think Kincaid is in a really good situation in Buffalo. I think the arrow is definitely pointing upward in terms of production expectations, with targets opening up and catches opening up for this next season. And I think the Bills are going to get creative with how they use Kincaid, who is a guy who I think you can line up in the slot even in certain formations to be able to open things up as a receiver. And I think they're going to use Kincaid a lot in terms of trying to cancel out the lack of receiver production they're probably going to have in year one. So I went with a B for Kincaid.
Yeah, I also went with a B for Dalton Kincaid, so we're in agreement there. And like you said, it's kind of, for me, it's more looking at the upside and especially looking at how he finished the season, because I think as the season progressed, they started to use him in a more appropriate and explosive role in their passing game. You watch the first half, really like the first 3/4 of the season, it was basically just stick option routes, 5 to 7 yards past the line of scrimmage, flats, hooks, short stop routes. He was pretty much just a check down option, and didn't really even have the opportunity to get big plays based on his route tree and his usage in their offense. And then as the season progressed, he still had the ability to just instantly automatically separate on option routes, which I think is going to be his go-to throughout his career. But they started to use him vertically a lot more, and that's where you really saw his big playability pop on tape. I think the way that he ended the year, not just in terms of his play, but his usage, has me really optimistic for what he can do going forward. And then, yeah, like you mentioned, the Bills don't have a ton of options outside of him, just as far as established receivers. Khalil Shakir is good. We'll see what Keon Coleman can do, but I think that Kincaid is going to have a huge role in the offense this year, and wouldn't surprise me if he reaches 1,000 yards. So I'm going with a B. I think solid rookie season. Next pick at 26 is Mazi Smith for the Dallas Cowboys. And this is another one that I've got to go with a D-. There's, similar to Quinton Johnston, just not a whole lot of positives that you can really take away from his rookie season. And at this point, development isn't linear. He could have a second year jump and get back on track. But at this point, I think Mazi Smith is my biggest draft miss from that class. I had him, I think, maybe around 20 or 21 on my board. Cowboys were obviously very high on him as well. Part of it is, I think, the fact that he lost weight. Originally, we thought that it was the Cowboys, telling him to lose weight, and then it comes out that it was actually him. So he drops like 15 or 20 pounds and goes from this nose tackle that's really solid at the point of attack, holding up against double teams, to somebody that just can't hold his spot at all. I mean, turn on any Mazi Smith game, and there's at least 1 or 2 pancakes on that tape, and he's usually playing like 10 snaps. So it's bad. It's holding up one-on-one, holding up against double teams, but also the anticipation of combo blocks. He has a major issue where he'll engage with the first block, and then that second block in the combo comes, and he's just not expecting it, gets uprooted, put on the ground. That was actually one of the main areas that you saw him struggle in college, and that has translated to the NFL. I do think he showed some juice as a pass rusher. He had some nice reps. He's, especially at his lower weight, he is pretty explosive and twitchy. So, if he can become a playable run defender, then I do still think there's some pass rushing upside with him. But I think the Cowboys might be in the market for a nose tackle.
Yeah, I went with a D- as well for Mazi Smith. I honestly thought his rookie season was so bad that I was projecting a defensive tackle to the Cowboys in the top 2 rounds this past year. They obviously ended up not going that route. But even last year, we saw him only get to total 13 total tackles as a rookie. And I just didn't think Mazi Smith made the jump well. I think you talked about it a lot there. I think a lot of assignments just looked out of his league at times, which resulted in him just not getting the level of snaps you would expect a first-round defensive tackle to get. And a new coaching staff on the defensive side. I mean, almost an entire new coaching staff if you really think about it on the defensive side. It'll be like a fresh start for Mazi this year. So he definitely will have the opportunity to prove us wrong. But I would be lying if I said I was not concerned about what I saw last year. And I don't have much of an expectation for this upcoming year. So we'll see if he can prove me wrong there. But the NFL game kind of looked too fast for Mazi Smith his rookie year. Moving over to the Jacksonville Jaguars at pick 27. They take tackle Anton Harrison. I feel like we've had some negative picks here talking about their rookie seasons. I thought Anton Harrison had a pretty solid rookie season. I think he had some great games that you could even say. I think he flashed a lot against some really tough assignments. I thought Anton Harrison showed he belonged, showed he was a first-round caliber tackle. People in the comments may say that there were some negative moments and he may not have graded out great by some metrics and certain sites that grade performances, like a PFF didn't love Anton Harrison's rookie season, for example. But I thought as a pass protector, he flashed a lot this last year. And I have a feeling that Jacksonville feels very strongly about their selection of Anton Harrison. I went with a B for Harrison. I think this next year will be a big one for him and seeing what steps he takes forward. I want to see him be able to push in the run game a little bit better for sure and be a little bit more strong in that area of things. But if he can continue to grow on a very strong start as a pass protector, he has a very bright future in this league. So I went with a B because those flashes showed enough for me to probably warrant him going in the first round if we get a redraft.
Yeah, I had very similar thoughts to you on Anton Harrison. Also went with a B. I'm very high on his upside as a pass rusher. I liked him as a prospect. And like you said, I think he showed a lot of great things in that phase as a rookie. His matchup with Will Anderson really stands out. I think 20 or 22 maybe one-on-one matchups, didn't allow a single pressure. The Jags passing game is kind of difficult to evaluate from a blocking standpoint because last year they were getting rid of the ball so quickly. Clearly just did not trust their offensive line to hold up in pass pros. So it's a lot of 1- and 3-step drops. And there's a lot of reps where it's kind of hard to evaluate because, they don't even have to hold up for that long. So that is kind of one uncertain element for him in pass pro. I think the main issue that I had with Anton Harrison's rookie tape was, like you said, the run blocking. Felt like he was probably, I think probably the worst run blocker of any of the first round offensive linemen. Not just that he didn't have many positive plays, but he was at times a liability in the run game and was resulting in a lot of negative plays, just, slipping off of blocks, not being able to sustain for more than a second. And I didn't really like his upside as a run blocker coming out of college either. So for him, I think it's about getting to a passable level where you're not, holding your offense back. But most important thing is pass blocking, and I feel really good about Anton Harrison's upside there. So going with a B for him. Next pick, 28, the Bengals took edge rusher Myles Murphy out of Clemson. And I went with a C- for Myles Murphy. I am still optimistic about his upside. I think that as a pass rusher, obviously he has the high-end elite traits, but I do think he flashed as a pass rusher last year, playing kind of a rotational role, felt like 20 to 25 snaps a game. He had a few nice speed to power reps against Deion Dawkins. had an inside counter sack against the Titans, and then a chop rip sack actually against Christian Darrisaw that was really nice. Outside of a few flash plays, though, he didn't really go to his moves that often. It was a lot of just rushing down the middle, not really having a plan. So want to see him get more decisive and have a plan as a pass rusher. I saw he graded out really bad against the run. I didn't notice many negative plays in run defense. There were a few missed tackles, but he's got good size. Felt like he held up pretty well. Want to see him go to that long arm that was kind of his staple in college also. But yeah, C-, didn't really do much, but I still think there's optimism. There's signs of life there. So I'm not out on him by any means.
So I went with a C, and I'll say that I was closer to going C+ than I was to going C-. I wouldn't have taken Myles Murphy in the first round in 2023 via my college scouting of him. I just didn't think – I thought the high upside was obviously very apparent, but I thought we were farther away from seeing him make a real impact as a rookie. And I think he played better than I thought he would early, and he didn't get a lot of run. I mean, he only played 28% of the defensive snaps last year, logged 305 total defensive snaps on the year. So not a whole lot. And I thought he, like you said, had some flashes in the passing game. I'm curious to kind of see when he'll be able to kind of break into their overall rotation, or even third down and pass down situations. Because obviously Trey Hendrickson is a very proven commodity off the edge. I think Sam Hubbard has shown himself to be a very reliable second option off the edge. So finding a way on the field is a little tough there. But I think he was able to show the ceiling element of his game earlier than I imagined, which is why I ended up going a C instead of that C- range. I'm really interested to kind of see how they look to use him this year, because I think if you give him more snaps, I think that's the only way you're going to be able to evaluate his ability as a pass rusher. But it's hard to take those other guys off the field. So definitely a struggle that Cincinnati's going to have this year. But I went with a C with some optimism that a C+ could go that range if he gets more played as a sophomore this year. Going over to pick 29, the Saints selected Brian Bresee out of Clemson. This is a guy who I was shocked fell as far as he did. Obviously had some injury concerns that kind of got flagged during the draft process for him that kind of threw him down people's boards. In New Orleans, there's a lot of veterans on that defensive line that kind of held back any rookie from probably making an impact early. But I ended up going with a C, similar that I gave Murphy. I think Bresee is a guy who has upside to be a real contributor in both the run and passing game off the interior. I think trying to learn from these veterans in the room, trying to take some of what Cam Jordan's strengths are, even if Cam Jordan isn't a one-for-one defensive tackle to edge comparison, obviously here. I think that is a really good veteran that Bresee is going to be able to utilize, and I'm expecting that he's going to get more run this next year. So I'm very interested to kind of see what Bresee's role this year is. So pretty similar to like what my take was with Murphy just a second ago. I think Bresee's the guy that teeters towards that C+ range, and I wouldn't be shocked if it's even higher if he's allowed to get more run in New Orleans this year.
Yep. I also went with a C for, is it Bresee? I always thought it was Bresee, Bresee or Bresee. I went with a C. I think that, he actually showed probably of these last 4 picks that are all edge rushers or defensive linemen, I thought he showed the most upside as a pass rusher. He has legit explosiveness off the snap, lateral quickness to win the edge as a pass rusher. His 2 best games, I thought pretty clearly, were against the Panthers, which is, based on their injuries, one of the worst interior O-lines that I've watched. So he was kind of abusing them, and then a little bit closer to average against everybody else that he faced. And like I said, with Kijah Cancey and Mazi Smith, Brian Bresee was also just a liability against the run. And I had concerns about that going back to his college tape. He just doesn't play with great pad level and gets rooted out of his gap a lot more easily than you would want for a player of his size. So that's something that's got to improve. He's got to improve his footwork, anchoring and holding the point. But I do think that that he has real upside as a pass rusher. I'm excited about the flashes that he showed, and went with a C, kind of my standard grade for a rotational, just average late first round pick. And then speaking of rotational average late first round picks, we've got Nolan Smith at pick 30 to the Eagles, edge rusher out of Georgia. And I'm also going with a C for him. Different player than Bresee and some of the other players that we've talked about. It's still amazing to me. Like, I feel like Nolan Smith has superhuman abilities as a run defender. I don't understand how he isn't unplayable on early downs at his size, but he just plays with such great leverage, rarely gets moved off of his spot, put on his back. Felt like he held up really well, setting the edge on early downs. I came away from his rookie tape with not very much confidence in him developing as a pass rusher. He had a nice sack. I think it was in the wild card game against Tampa Bay, sack on Gadecki, but overall really struggles with length. Pass blockers with long arms, they can just establish early contact, and he doesn't really have any ability to get into secondary counters. No bull rush to speak of. And yeah, he's got to become someone that just is so quick and precise with his hands to make up for some of his size disadvantages rushing the passer. Also had a lot of bad plays dropping into coverage. That was kind of the result of the majority of his bad plays. I felt like was, zone drops and just letting stuff get behind him. So yeah, C for Nolan Smith, but we're really going to just find out more this season, ideally playing a full-time role.
Yeah, I mean, Nolan Smith was a guy that had a very successful combine last year, and was able to build off that to be a first-round pick. I think a lot of people were surprised that he kind of rose to that level of a prospect even. But to get to that point, last year, it's hard to grade because he was mostly used in a special teams role. I mean, for just example, he played 16% of the defensive snaps for the Eagles last year, 188 logged snaps on defense. He logged 245 on special teams. You would just think that with the upside that he would be able to carve a roll out, but like you said, he really wasn't able to build as a pass rusher even throughout the year. And it was hard even at the end of the year to kind of project towards next season, because I think it's fair to say Nolan Smith was drafted with the expectation of being a raw pass rusher. But I think even near the end of the year last year, it was starting to look less raw and more so just that the pass rush element of this is just a lot faster at the NFL level than it was in college for him. And I think he almost just looked frustrated against offensive line assignments that he would have. So I ended up going with a C- for Nolan Smith, just because of I'm really wondering what that next step is for him this year. And I struggle to kind of figure out how his defensive role is going to grow much off of what we saw as a rookie, at least. So we'll have to see how that works out for them. And obviously, if they can unlock the athleticism that this guy has, I mean, the ceiling is the moon. But he has to get there. And up next is technically the last first-round pick of last year. Obviously, no 32nd pick via the
We can
Dolphins.
do Joey Porter Jr. if you want after this.
Hey, we can do Joey Porter just to do 32. But the last first-round pick technically being a guy that I'm just going to ruin his name, and I apologize in advance, Felix Anudike-Uzomah.
Anudike-Uzomah, I think.
Anudike-Uzomah with the Kansas City Chiefs at pick 31. Another guy who didn't get a whole lot of run, but still found a way to get more defensive snaps than Nolan Smith did. 218 defensive snaps last year, which is 20% of what Kansas City's defensive snaps last year. It would have been hard to crack this defensive line in Kansas City last year, so I like to give the benefit of the doubt. I think this is a guy who's probably going to be, and I think he was drafted with this knowledge that he's probably going to be more impactful in the run game than the pass game, off the edge and being able to set the edge as a run defender, which is valuable. Not something that you usually use a first-round pick on, but if you can make a name for yourself there, like, you're going to be a coach's favorite type of player. I still ended up going in the C- range for him just because I wasn't able to see enough flashes to kind of project a big second-year jump. But I do think he's a guy that is going to continue to be around the ball and be a solid run defender when his name is called. I just don't know how often that's going to be.
Yeah, so what was your grade again on him?
I want a C-. I think I said that. Hopefully
I went with a D. He played actually a good amount of snaps early in the season, and then I don't know what the cause of this was. Maybe it was just them seeing him be ineffective, but he went from a rotational role to playing like 5 to 10 snaps per game. The good thing with some of these later first round players is that they played enough snaps that I can just watch all of them in a realistic amount of time. So I went through all of his snaps as a rookie. And like you said, I think he was a pretty solid run defender, had a nice unblocked TFL in the Super Bowl against the 49ers. For the most part, held up pretty well in the run game, made some plays in the backfield, but just a completely ineffective and I would say like useless pass rusher as a rookie. Out of 100 qualifying edge rushers, he ranked 100th with a 3.33% pass rush win rate. And you watch him, he's either just trying to run through blockers, but he doesn't have enough power to win with his bull rush, or he's trying to run around the outside shoulder, but he doesn't do anything with his hands to defeat the blocker's hands. He doesn't have, first round traits in terms of speed and explosiveness. So not only he doesn't have like the technical development to really succeed as a pass rusher, but I also don't see the athletic traits for there to be much upside there. And yeah, I watch his tape and I come away with the same thought that I had after the Chiefs drafted him in the first round, which is, why did they draft him in the first round? It's almost like I just feel like he was overdrafted, and I feel bad being too critical of him because I don't think he was built for that kind of role. To me, he's a third, fourth edge rusher at best. Hopefully he proves me wrong, but yeah, I was not very impressed with his rookie season at all. If we want to briefly talk about Joey Porter Jr. to make it an even 32. Didn't pre-plan a grade for him, but I'm actually going to say A+ for Joey Porter Jr. I think that outside of, I think he was the best. I think he was the best outside rookie corner by a pretty clear margin. I think he's already one of the 5 to 7 best press corners in the NFL. He's lining up against like true number one receivers and just completely shutting them down. Had some issues with penalties. He's a very physical player. Amari Cooper got him on a few bad reps. Like, he had some losses, but just a smothering presence on the outside that can end routes before they even get off the line of scrimmage. And, you said that you would take Deontay Banks third. I had Banks third originally, but I think I would take Joey Porter Jr. definitely over him. I might even consider taking Joey Porter Jr. over Devin Witherspoon. That's how excited I was by his rookie season.
Yeah, I mean, I'd give it an A+ too. I also didn't plan a grade for Joey Porter, but I I think sometimes the easy pick is the right pick. And his history, obviously, with the Pittsburgh franchise when he was there in the second round at pick 32, a pick that they got for trading away Chase Claypool. I'd say that was a pretty big win for them in a trade now when you look at it in full terms. But it was easy for them to pick Joey Porter, and it was a need. I'm going A+, even though for some reason Pittsburgh felt the need not to play him early again. Like they felt a reason to make him rotational early on and then let him kind of earn the starting role later. And I've been told that's like Pittsburgh's thing. They like to do that with rookies, and I get it. But like there just wasn't a player on the roster to warrant taking snaps away from the kid. So I wish, and I think that's probably the reason that I still have this outlook that I'd probably take Banks over Porter in a redraft right now, is because I got to see more from Banks. Like I got to see more of those flashes, and the Steelers kind of withheld that from me, which like for some reason they felt the need to do it with him and Broderick Jones, guys that I feel like should have been starting for day one on their roster. But
Keanu Benton.
Keanu Benton played.
They did the same thing with Keanu Benton. He was like
no, I know.
one of the best rookie pass rushers, regardless of position, but really eased him into the lineup, and like he never really had a full-time role. But yeah, that's just how the Steelers do it with rookies for whatever reason.
Hey, good draft class either way, but you would love to look back on it as those three guys just having three of the best rookie seasons of any rookie, just because you played them more. But big sophomore seasons for all those guys. Really excited for Pittsburgh's 2024 class as well. So I guess we'll see how they play those guys. But this has been part 2 of us regrading the 2023 draft class. Let us know if you liked this series. Maybe we'll look back at some other draft classes as well in the future. But my name is Destin Adams. He is James Foster. We will be back next week with more content at the Football Room on A to Z Sports.